Welcome to the Rialto Marketing Podcast. Today's episode is a revenue acceleration series interview where we talk to seven-figure B2B professional service firm owners that are actively trying to grow their business and get to the next level. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly so that you can learn from their experience. Hi, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing, where we believe you must remove your revenue roadblocks to accelerate growth, and marketing shouldn't be difficult. I am super excited to have Anthony Nini with Pearl Technology with me today. Anthony, welcome and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into this with you. Before we do that, I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions just to kick things off. So you ready to rock and roll?
Sounds great. Yep.
Okay. So very quickly, what do you do? How long have you been doing it?
All right. Currently, as the president, I've been in the seat for a little over a year. Before that, I was a vice president of operations. Been at Pearl Technology for 3 years. In my current role, tasked with obviously the strategic vision of the company, knowing what our technology trends are, but most importantly, how that aligns with our customers. And then we design solutions kind of based on those capabilities with our people and our processes. And then from there, pretty much just monitoring the execution of our service delivery. And not to throw too many buzzwords right out the gate, but KPIs, just knowing how we're performing, what those indicators are,
Yeah,
and monitor and improve them from there is most important.
awesome. So since you stepped into the president seat a year ago, what's the most important thing you've learned?
Coming out, especially of vice president of operations and being just a huge nerd, right? Coming out of the technology aspect of every minute of every day, putting the president hat on, truly understanding our customers' requirements, as we sell technology, not just for technology's sake, but understand kind of what their limitations are, what are their driving forces, what are their pain points. And then from there, getting into the technical engineering of designing solutions. But that's probably been the biggest learning curve for me is just taking a step out of the tech,
Yeah,
understanding the business requirements, but then connecting those two. So
yeah,
the technical background definitely helps drive solutions.
yeah. I love that. And selfishly, Anthony, from a marketing standpoint, everything starts with the customer, right? And
Yep.
understanding the customer. If you don't have that, it's really difficult for everything after that to be in alignment. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now, man, we all know growing a business is hard. Do you have any kind of mantra, motivational saying that you say to yourself or share with your team to push through those times where you hit roadblocks?
Yeah, I know we had talked the other day. 23 years coming out of the Air Force. Our mantra there was just saying America and pressing through, embracing the suck. But now I'm in corporate America. I gotta come up with a better mantra. So
Yeah,
it sounds cliche, but failing forward. We're always doing some type of problem solving to something that's never existed before, right? I mean, the things
yeah,
we're even doing today didn't exist a year ago. So getting people comfortable with that failing forward, obviously trying things and learning from our mistakes. That's probably our mantra here is just continuing to press through and embracing the failure as long as you're learning from it.
yeah,
But that's probably the biggest. If you're a perfectionist, it's a difficult industry to be in because it's
yeah.
hard for everything to line up. But just pressing through. So that's kind of where we
Yeah,
go.
that's such a great mantra, right? Because a lot of people that work for companies, they're afraid to fail, right? Because they're afraid that there's going to be repercussions there. But in an environment where failure is embraced and it's something to learn from and move on, right? People are, I think, a lot more apt to own their mistakes, learn from them, and push through. So
Yeah.
I
But
I love that.
I'll give my wife some credit. She made me pretty comfortable in the feeling of inadequacy and going home and just knowing, hey, I know where I sit. So yeah, no, I'm good with it.
Uh, that's good. That's good. Um, so I know you had mentioned, Anthony, that you recently stepped into the president role. Um, After and this was after Pearl had acquired 3 companies.
Mhm.
Can you share with us what type of companies you acquired and what that process was like?
Yeah, as you said, I kind of came in after the fact, so I didn't get to see what led into the actual acquisitions other than, probably about 6 months later, I joined the team and we acquired a data center company. So we have two large data centers. We acquired a security operations center and a cybersecurity business, and then also an audio visual. So we do a lot of large and integration with audio visual equipment. So for me, again, in that operational realm, is just getting my head around the technical aspects of all of the different vendors, all of the different trends, and just understanding, from the ground up, kind of who we were and what we were doing. But I think it's a double-edged sword because everyone's excited, right? You're growing through acquisition. It is a definitely exciting thing. However, every step you take forward, you almost got to take two back because for a company to be successful, you have to have the infrastructure in place to support that, whether it's the marketing arm or just the vision that aligns with all four businesses. So at first, you're almost kind of running them separately
Yeah.
and until you can get that infrastructure in place, get that culture established, and take a good look in the mirror and say, well, who are we now? Like we know who we were separately, but what are our strengths now that we're converged and have those synergies? And that just takes time. You might have an idea, but it takes a couple days and months to play out to see where that really is, and then identifying, kind of how you're going to move forward from there.
Yeah, I would imagine I'd look at it's hard enough to integrate companies that you acquire, period. But a lot of the business owners that I interviewed that have grown through acquisition are acquiring similar companies, right? A managed service provider acquires another managed service provider. In this case, you guys acquired complementary businesses that you wanted to fold into the mix, right? So that
Yeah.
you had a more comprehensive and extensive offering. Um, that's a totally different beast, isn't it?
That's the exciting part, you know.
Yeah,
And then because they are different, there is a lot of infrastructure requirements, especially audio visual, pretty heavy on the infrastructure. And if you want to talk in the geek speak of the OSI later, a lot of the physical aspects to that. And then you
yeah,
get into your service provider and a lot of the applications. So just getting all of those things to align, and they do. They have a lot of synergies. To your point, very complementary of each other. So once the processes and everything got in place and we started creating that synergy, then yeah, it just took time, but it is very exciting.
yeah. Now, since you stepped into the role as president, what have you been focusing on to drive growth?
Taking a step back, having observed and learned how the company's grown through those acquisitions and knowing who we are, then it comes down to, okay, who is our ideal mission partner? and and we truly believe that we're a Central Illinois based company, and we have some amazing customers, and we believe in their mission. So finding out how we can enhance each organization that we are dealing with in those separate companies, but then to bring in those complementary services really made us take a step back on who are we now and who
Mhm.
is the ideal mission partner that we can work closely with. So that was pretty much kind of the first step of driving our growth.
And when you talk about ideal mission partner, you're talking about your ideal clients?
Correct. Yep.
Got it. Um, when you took a step back and took the time to think about that, do you remember what you did? I mean, were you talking to people on the team? Were you looking at your current and past client list? What did that process look like?
Not to give too much credit to strategic plans because plans are useless. Planning is vital. But to your point, that's when it
Yeah.
hit right during the planning process. So knowing where your vendors are going is important, right? Because we're selling technology and they're coming up with new technologies every day. So that was kind of the basis of knowing where the industry is going across, multiple different products that we're selling, and getting our head around that. And then also knowing our customers' requirements, which are changing. But to your point, going through, business review meetings with them, paying attention. We got two ears and one mouth. So just listening and understanding and capturing that and then
Yeah.
sharing it, putting all of that together really kind of, as you look back, you can dot the lines looking backwards. That's kind of how it all came together. It took time. I mean, there was no crystal ball, but through
Right.
that process, we were able to establish kind of what our current state is, what our future state, and where those mission partners aligned.
Yeah. When you understand who your ideal clients are, everything after that becomes simpler. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it can help you make the best decisions possible, right? It's like a measuring stick. It's like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Well, is that something our ideal clients would find valuable? Yes or no? I mean, if it's a no, then you need to really question why you're actually doing it, right? And so, the other way I think about it too is understanding your ideal clients. It's that fuel that's gonna get those marketing vehicles or growth vehicles that you choose to employ where they need to go. Kudos to you for taking the time to do that. Most businesses do not take the time to really do that.
Mhm.
But you're taking time now so that you can go faster later.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, One of the things that I found fascinating when we connected in the pre-interview was you talked about this concept of holding regular roast sessions. Uh, and I love this. I think there's a ton that people can learn from this. So,
Mhm.
what can you share? Like, what the heck are these, and why do you do them?
Yeah. So I guess the concept comes from, when you see a person retire at the end of their career, a lot of them are comedians and they get roasted, right? And it's hilarious, like a lot of people have tendencies, so you laugh at kind of what's brought up. And I just thought it was unfortunate that some people hear these things at the end of their career. So when you merge 3, 4 companies together, you're going to have a lot of different cultures. And the first thing you can do is try to establish a climate that will then create that universal culture. And to do that, you need strong feedback mechanisms. And if your evaluation program's doing that, great. Sometimes an evaluation program can kind of be corporate theater. So you need to have a strong mechanism to get feedback, and it has to start at the top. So as the president, direct reports will all meet in a room, and there's a specific rules of engagements to this process because it's very important that you do it correctly, and you don't want it to look like you're witch hunting or have any kind of agenda. So
Yeah,
essentially what you're doing is just asking the people who you might have just met in the last year or two. It might be highly introverted technical people. Maybe they have some things going on that they're just not telling you. So to pull it out of people, write on a whiteboard so many numbers of things that I'm asking for them to tell me, hey, continue to do these. And then I have an area of, hey, these are areas of improvement. And I kind of talk through the methodology, and then I leave. And I give the team a couple hours to write down those things they want me to continue and those things that they want me to improve on. And then in 2 hours, I ask that they leave. And when I come in, the litmus test is how much it hits you, right? If you don't make a no face or what the heck kind of
yeah,
moment, then they didn't trust you to kind of give it to you. But when you look at it, I highly recommend sitting down first,
yeah,
because it can hit pretty hard. And I tell everyone I can't change who I am overnight, but being aware of whatever tendencies I have or things I'm doing that might be misunderstood, I'm gonna take it to heart, and I'm gonna come up with a plan, whether it's reading a book, getting a mentor, but I'll start working on those things. And from there, everyone understands, hey, you're really trying, you really care about their feedback. And then you ask those same people, hey, if you get the opportunity, you have enough time with your team, I ask that you do the same thing, extend that courtesy all the way to the front line, so that as a company, we have that culture of respect, but also just continuous improvement, that we're just all humans trying to get better. When we're just selling technology, it's a commodity, right? They could buy
yeah.
technology from anybody, but they want it from someone they can trust. And that human element is kind of what differentiates us from a lot of other companies.
Okay, Anthony, I want to make sure I got this right. So, and how often do you do these?
For me, once a year.
Okay, so once a year, you get all your direct reports in a room, you give them the guidelines, and you write up on a whiteboard two things. And remind me, one was what they want you to keep doing,
Continue. Yep.
continue, and the other is where you can improve.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So, two columns on the whiteboard, and then you leave and they just put everything that comes to mind.
Yep. Well, they brainstorm together,
Okay.
and there's a limited number, just to keep it kind of simple. And each person essentially gets one continue and one improve, but they
Okay.
had to convince the group. So there's a lot of laughing, there's a lot of joking going on too as they're roasting you. They're having a good
Okay.
time with it, but it's in one person's handwriting, so I
Okay.
won't know who's,
Yeah. Who
it's
did it?
completely anonymous, and they have to convince everybody. If they're saying,
Yeah.
hey, he's a poor communicator, then everyone needs to kind of chime in, and it's not just one person dominating that
Got it.
conversation.
Which is why this takes a couple hours for them
Yeah,
to do.
it
Now,
probably could go all day with me, but
yeah. So, how many different things? What's the limit for each one of these columns?
so what I do is if there's 5 people, I do 6 continues, 6 improves. So each person gets one, but then
Okay.
there's a wild card in there, right? So that kind of helps you uh, change up of knowing who did what, because there's an extra one in there. But also,
Okay.
if there's kind
Got
of
it.
some reoccurring item, get that extra one in there.
But then after that, when you go into the room, they're gone. So it's really just you digesting this. And do you come back and meet with them after this, or do you just take it and like let them know, hey, I appreciate the feedback and I'm going to be working on these things?
Yeah, that's in the introduction that
Okay.
it's going to be an awkward ending. I've had some people give me input initially that they wanted to be in the room, and my my advice on that is you don't want to agree to disagree. You don't want to get to the 99-yard line, kind of
Right.
ruin the whole exercise. So just to leave that variable out, I ask that they leave, and yeah, you'll see them the next day, and they'll look at you kind of like, "Are you going to say something?" Right? And I've already, kind of communicated the fact that it's going to take me time. I'm not going to ask who said what. Just know that
Yep.
I know, and they appreciate the fact that, depending on what's going on, if they really had something that they had to get off their chest, they feel really good about that, or they got
Yeah.
to stick it to the man or whatever. But
Yeah. Well, but they're going to be able to see long term whether, I mean, look, the things that they want you to keep doing, that's much easier for you, right? Because you're already doing it.
yeah,
It's the things where you need to improve. They're going to see whether you're taking those things to heart and whether you're trying to implement them over time, right?
correct. Yeah, and
But
I was gonna say, and
uh,
the continues aren't just to hear good stuff about myself. It's just that as you try to improve yourself, you don't want to lose what you did have going well, right?
of
So
course,
yeah, that's the point of
right?
that.
Yeah, you don't want to stop doing what's working well for you and your team, right? So,
Yep.
um, I love that, and I actually like the fact I've never had anybody talk about this in this way because it's um most people would think about this being a very hands-on thing where you're involved, but taking yourself out of the picture, I think you get much more honest answers and feedback, and they're not afraid of any retaliation coming out of it, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
um I love it. Roast sessions,
Yeah.
super
But
strong feedback mechanism.
I will say this as an introduction. A lot of people will give their employee an evaluation, and at the end, they're like, "You got anything for me?" And it's like, if you got a really good evaluation, you're not going to ruin it by then telling your boss, "Hey, you're not doing well," right? So it's kind of
Yeah.
a kind of a weak way to go about it. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's good.
Uh, I really like this. I think people can take this concept and we can all benefit from doing this. Anthony, I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk
Hmm.
about marketing. I mean, I got to talk about marketing, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so I want to dig into two marketing concepts, one that's working well and another one that's a challenge. First is case studies, which have helped your marketing efforts. Tell us more about this. I mean, how many do you have? Like, how did you go about the process and anything else that you think might be of value?
Yeah, as we built the new company post acquisition. We redid our website, and as we were brainstorming, the most powerful content on the website, we asked ourselves what we looked for. And a social proof of a company's capability is demonstrated obviously through a case study, and you get to not only see the customers they're working with, but the solutions they design. So we thought that it was one of the most important things we're going to have to get after, and the team did an amazing job, just creating the layouts and creating the content, and we started putting those on our website. And they are their most powerful marketing tool we have, because technology is difficult. It's not something you can really put your hands on, right?
Yeah.
And we're not selling bicycles or things that people can kind of see. So they have to try to understand what that solution, what that problem was that we solved, and the case studies, especially when you're building your reputation within a region or an area, and people know those companies and respect
Yeah.
those companies. And so that was probably the most powerful thing we had.
Are your case studies shorter or are they pretty long? I mean, how many pages are these
Try to
things?
keep it one page. I have
Yeah.
massive
Cool.
ADHD myself, so for
Yeah.
me to look at it, yeah, we got to keep it quick. But sometimes
Yeah.
we get to 2 pages.
I love it. I always tell people, 1 or 2 pages, you want to focus on the problem they had, what the process was like to solve that, and what the outcome or the result was, right? That's really what people care about. So if we keep it simple, concise, short and to the point, and if you can give specific data sets or
Mhm.
specific numbers, that's always super beneficial. But like you said, I mean, so many of the companies that I work with they're in B2B professional services where, man, it's all about trust, credibility, authority, and having testimonials are great. Case studies are kind of another level above that, but both of those are really low hanging fruit for most businesses that they're there, they just haven't taken the time to pull them out. And gosh, if that's one of the couple things that you pull away from this interview, I think, man, you're going to be well served. Go implement roast sessions and get some case studies. You're going to be in great shape.
Yeah.
Certainly a good place to start. Um, so the second thing, when we connected before, you talked about tracking ROI on branding as a challenge. What types of branding are you doing, and what have you done to try to track it?
Yeah. Again, talking about being kind of a regional marketing effort, we do have a pretty significant radio campaign going. And
Yeah,
we have a weekly podcast that one of our managing partners does, Dave with the Greg and Dan show. He does a public service by really sharing a lot of cybersecurity updates, which has a pretty huge following. But then we have commercials throughout the day, and I think for me, it's hard to stick out in a hyper competitive, noisy world of radio. So
yeah,
we do have tools that will track conversions on, hey, you ran a commercial at this time and X amount of people hit your website. But from a branding standpoint, it is powerful. A lot of people, we get a lot of word of mouth feedback from it.
yeah,
So recently we launched a thing called Operation Jalapeno. And coming out of the military again, I just give everything an operation name. But this one's
yeah.
Jalapeno, to spicing up kind of our radio commercials. And we're excited to launch them here real soon and to kind of see how they do. But again, just trying to make sure that we're being heard, because if you're talking about your solutions, people don't want to be sold to. So you
Yeah,
also people want to know what you do, right? So we do some
yeah.
pretty advanced things, which is hard to say without saying it. But we have some radio ads that we've been working on, kind of spicing up.
It's a couple things I'll add here because tracking ROI on marketing is a challenge for a lot of businesses. Certain aspects and certain marketing vehicles are much easier to track than others. Um, Branding is one that is really difficult, and my personal opinion is that trying to track branding return on investment, you're just going to drive yourself crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's just can you do certain, if you do a radio ad or you do a TV commercial, Can you send people to a specific link, or can you have
Mhm.
call tracking? Absolutely, you can. Um, and if you can do those kinds of things, you can try and start to track some of that activity. But overall branding, for most small businesses, like branding should be a small portion of your overall marketing budget. The rest of it, I believe, should be invested in things that you can more directly track. And
Mhm.
brand building is a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, man, you talk to people that try to really track branding efforts. I mean, can you track, hey, are the overall visits to our website increasing?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. But can you
Yeah.
attribute all of those to your branding activities? No, you can't.
Yeah.
Um, but you can use data sets like that to try and gauge whether some of your branding efforts are yielding some results, but you're gonna have a really hard time tracking it directly back.
Yeah.
Um, whereas with social or content, you can determine like, hey, how many people are coming to our site from this, and are they actually taking actions that we want them to take?
Yeah.
That becomes simpler to track.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it's easy because you got to take the time to put it in place, but
Yeah.
um, super common challenge, and especially like radio. Man, that's a tough one.
Yeah. And to your point, like a little more precision on those marketing efforts compared to
Yeah.
the branding. But the branding, this is such a broad stroke of an effort to get out
Yes.
there and people hear your name and then they kind of know who they can call if they need you. But yeah,
Yep.
the only feedback we really get from a pulse standpoint is just the verbal of people saying, "Yeah, I hear you on the radio,"
Yep.
and that definitely helps and makes it feel good and return on the investment.
Yep. No doubt about it. So, Anthony, looking back on your experience with Pearl, what are the top 2 to 3 things that stand out for you?
I think just yeah, I don't know. Any technology company is obviously in a state of transition every day, but for us, it was having that vision of kind of who we are, where we're going, and then developing a strategy that you write down. It's really easy to get in a conversation just like this, and for us to agree on some initiatives and some direction, but if we don't truly write it down and then establish kind of what our objectives and goals to hold ourselves accountable, it'll just kind of spin, right? So
Yeah.
I think the most important thing for us was writing down those plans, having those objectives, and really moving forward on them. But at the same time, that's a lot of structure. You have to have the flexibility to take a step back and just adjust and say, hey, you
Yeah.
know what?
Yep.
That we're balancing a lot of different competing priorities, and this thing that we're doing over here is actually now more important, and we're going to focus on that. So I think being open, having a lot of structure and being open, kind of double-edged sword there, but
Yep.
that's been the key to success for us is having that plan and moving forward on it, holding each other accountable to it, and
Yeah.
that's probably the most important thing.
I'll add to that because look, I'm a huge planning person. Um, but I think most of us overcomplicate plans because we make them too long.
Hmm.
Right? Like the way I think about marketing planning is, a year-long marketing plan it's just not a good use of time because it's too long a period of time. Things change so rapidly that any year-long marketing plan after the first 90 days isn't the same. And so
Hmm.
when I look at planning, I look at planning in 90-day sprints, or 12-week sprints. It keeps plans simple, um, but it keeps you focused, right? Because if you don't have a plan, an idea of where you're going, it's so easy to get distracted,
Yeah.
uh, and just go down places that you don't want to go, or you just end up throwing stuff up against a wall, seeing what sticks, but you don't
Hmm.
know why it sticks, or if it works. So I'm a huge planning person, but I totally agree with what you said. We gotta be open, and we
Hmm.
have to adjust. And that's why I love 90 days, because it's long enough to see whether you're starting to gain traction, but then you can evaluate what's working, what's not, and then make course corrections and adjustments for the next 90 days. So
Yeah.
because it's yeah, I mean, if you don't have a strategy in place and a plan of how you're going to get there,
Yeah.
you're just winging it.
I'd
Um,
add on that too. the importance of communication, right? So
Yeah.
everyone's heard of 8-minute abs. I try to do a 8-minute video update to our strategy. So every month, put something out, 8 minutes, just so that everyone will watch it. Anything longer than that, people will tune out. But if
Yeah.
you are adjusting things in those sprints, it is a fallacy to think that everyone's keeping up with how that strategy is changing.
Yeah.
Just because everyone's busy on the front lines doing the tackling and blocking of all the things that happen in a day. So you definitely got to take the time, communicate, hey, what has changed, what the new vision is, and that's the most important thing from a communication standpoint when you are being open to change.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So, knowing what you know now, is there anything you do differently?
So now that's a tricky question, and I feel like it's a trap, Tim. But I
It's
think if
not.
you
It's not.
if you asked anyone on my team, they have 100 things for me. But I think looking back, and this sounds arrogant, I really just can't say I would change anything, only because the effort was there, and that's the most
Yeah.
important thing for me. We talked about failing forward, made a plenty of mistakes, but we learned from them,
Yeah.
and so from that aspect, I wouldn't change anything.
Anthony, it's been awesome. I honestly, my key takeaways are, man, I love the roast session, uh, and I also love the fact that you touched on case studies and the importance of that and how that's helped you guys with your marketing, because I think that's super low hanging fruit for most people. So, thank you for taking the time to share your experience with us today. Where, if people want to connect, where can they connect with you?
Sounds great. Yeah, no, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. And follow me on LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn, protechnology.com. If you're in the Peoria area, Central Illinois, we do host a lot of events. We actually have one coming up here in a couple weeks on protecting senior citizens and cybersecurity. It's a free event hosted at the Peoria Riverfront Museum. But if you stay tuned, follow us on our website. We have a ton of free events coming up. And then, track us on our socials too at pearltechnology.com.
Cool. I love it. So pearltechnology.com, connect with Anthony on LinkedIn. We'll make sure that direct link goes in the show notes, but it's Anthony Mini, Mini. So go connect with him over there. Anthony, thank you, man. I appreciate the time. Those of you that are watching, listening, I appreciate you doing so. You can always connect with us if you need help or guidance on removing some of the marketing roadblocks that are in your way. You can do that over at rialtomarketing.com. The other tool we have for you is over at revenueroadblockscorecard.com. When we work with clients, we remove roadblocks in 9 key areas of marketing. And if you want to know which of those 9 are slowing down your growth, you can do it there at revenueroadblockscorecard.com. So thank you. Till next time, take care.